Okay, looks like we're live.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to do a bit of a test here with my advisors to see if, in fact, we are live. But I do believe we are live. No, we're not live in 30. Yeah, we're live. The joys of using technology when you're not a tech person.
I feel like we've all become our own tech people in a way over the last year and a half.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. We've all had to become our own IT and troubleshooting and all that at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so happy that you're both here. Thank you for joining me on a Mindful Monday. This is episode 3, the trifecta.
Third time's the charm, is that what they say?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
Well, shall we get kicked off, Michelle?
Let's do it. Absolutely.
All right. So, Michelle, why don't you get kicked off and give us a bit of an intro on what are Mindful Mondays? As you just said, this is our third one, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. So the idea behind Mindful Mondays is, guess what? I don't have all the answers. So I'm tapping into the expertise of others to talk about careers. Yes, my background is in HR, but to talk about HR related topics like careers, like stress, like workplace wellness. And I believe in the wisdom of collective knowledge. So that's why we have Brandy here today.
Welcome, Brandy.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
That's awesome. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, Michelle. I think now for anyone who's new or hasn't joined with us before, it would be a good time to do some quick intros. So Michelle Precourt of Mindful HR Services is corporate mindfulness consultant. She believes your best self is your relaxed self. And I have to say, I definitely feel relaxed whenever I'm talking with Michelle. It is completely stress-free and so easy. Brandy Payne, who's joining us today, she is a workplace mental health consultant, and her tagline is, I help high-achieving, high-performing people and teams dodge burnout and improve mental health so they can stay at top of their game no matter what happens. And I think that is so poignant and eloquent right now, and especially in a world like today, to dodge that burnout and improve mental health piece. I love it. Myself, as always, for the third go around, I'm your host. I'm a marketing and brand strategist. However, today I'm here as your host and moderator, and I'm really excited for the upcoming conversation. So once again, my name is Amit Rame. In this episode of Mindful Mondays, we will discuss managing personal boundaries. So I think that one is also super relevant and very important in today's conversation. How do we manage boundaries when the lines between work and life are so very blurred? And we see that especially now, we were just talking earlier about becoming our own IT people because we're doing this from home in our own place. So how do we manage that? We'll also look at how to create a more supportive workplace culture where saying no is okay. So let's jump into it. Michelle, we're calling this LinkedIn Live, Managing Personal Boundaries. Why is this an important topic for you? Why did you want to have an entire Mindful Monday session today centered around this topic?
Yeah, it's, I think because I've got some, I recognize as a consultant how difficult it is. So this office here with my laughing Buddha behind me is on the 3rd floor of our home. And so that does allow for some separation because luckily we have the space. I don't have to be in the kitchen. I don't have to be, in a room that I sleep in. These types of things can cause those blurred lines. So I'm invested. I have a personal interest in managing personal boundaries. And in addition to that, the clients that I work with also struggle. They struggle with this. We have things like these beautiful, amazing hateful, dreadful devices. It's the love-hate relationship with technology. It can be such a gift and such a curse. I'm curious to the folks who are listening, if you have two phones. Do you have a work phone and do you have a personal phone? I'm going to post this question on LinkedIn later as well, just about, does that help to put away your work phone if you have two phones, or if you only have one phone? What's your techniques for managing, the draw of wanting to respond to your cell phone? And there's brain science behind this as well. Chemicals in the brains trigger when we respond to something. And so part of it, frankly, is not our fault. It's the brain at work. So I'll pause there because I've said a lot, and I just think that there's no easy one answer to managing personal boundaries, but that's part of it. Is we are all replaceable at work. All of us are replaceable at work. And it's not that our employers don't love us and don't care for us and don't appreciate all the skill sets that we have, but we are not replaceable at home, right? I know, Ahmed, you're a father. You are not replaceable to your daughter. Brandy, you have kids as well. You're not replaceable as a mother or as a spouse. So this is why I also have an interest in this, in creating healthier humans and creating healthier workplace cultures through managing personal boundaries.
Yeah, that's such a salient point, especially when I think you really hit the nail on the head. You're saying we are replaceable at work to some degree through resources, but at home, there is nothing that can fill that same spot. So you have to be mindful in order to be ready and able at home, which is just as important, or if not more important. So, I love what you put there. Brandy, what are your thoughts on this? Can you share some of your thoughts around how you're feeling?
Yeah, so y'all might have seen my cat Mo earlier. He's currently sitting right on the desk, so he might pop by again, speaking of work and home. Yeah, so I think like Michelle really hit the nail on the head with a few pieces there. I mean, our families really do need us, and we need ourselves, right? If we're putting all of our energy and our time into our work, constantly being interrupted in our home lives, and just like feeling like we're continually on call, that actually has a negative impact on our well-being across our life. It has an impact on how we show up in our workplace and in our work time. Now, of course, recognizing that for many of us right now, workplace means like the little corner we've carved out in our home for working. But it has that impact on our ability to do the work we're trying to do, as well as how we show up for ourselves and for the people in our lives, whether that's, our children, if we have them, spouses or partners, if we have them, our extended family, our friends, everybody. It just has such an impact on the way we're able to process the things in front of us. And it kind of has that impact. Michelle was talking about the notifications and how they have that stress impact on us. Well, then what ends up happening is if we're always in a state of chronic stress and that elevated stress level from dealing with those incoming notifications, or feeling like we've got that time we got to go rush off to respond to that email and things like that, then we're never resetting our baseline stress level. And that is what puts us at risk for things like burnout. It also has that negative impact on how we show up in our relationships, because, relationships can get fractured over time if we're constantly showing up in a distracted or aggravated or just not being present. And so really thinking about how we can set some of those boundaries and create that space where we're able to look after ourselves, not just constantly looking after our families. I think for those of us who are especially parents of young kids, it's really easy to forget that we have needs and we need to look after our emotional, our physical, and our mental well-being, as well as our social well-being outside of our families.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, when you're saying that we're not replaceable to our spouses, or we're not replaceable to other resources around us, excuse me, getting a little bit of a frog in my throat. That is so important to be mindful of. And you're right, that little corner of that space that we carve out for ourselves in our homes to work, right now I'm working out of our second bedroom, and it feels weird because that's our personal space, but yet now with this new world that's now coming out into the public side. But also too, you want to create a space that when you are going for rest, you're not creating that mental attachment or association with work. And so I don't rest in this room, so it's okay. But if this was my bedroom, then it would be, that detachment very quickly goes away, because then you wake up and you're seeing that place where you work and what have you. You need that bit of a break. So having that detachment, I think, is important too. As a mental health consultant, Brandy, in terms of wellness and well-being, our personal boundaries, and I think this kind of relates to what you were mentioning before, but are personal boundaries being challenged as much as we think, or is this just something we're all saying, but are we feeling it? Is there truth to this right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to this. And I think, we're a phrase that I keep saying over and again is, the pandemic has exacerbated a lot of our challenges, but we didn't live in a mental health utopia pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us had challenges with our emails being on our, I think, Michelle was talking about our phones. I think most of us have our work email on our phone, and we tend to have the devices with us at all times. And so we were always getting those intrusions of emails, notifications, Slack messages, and the like. And that's where I think, as a broader culture, we really want to be putting some thought into how we manage that and when and where we're checking, also how we set our notifications and what some of the expectations within our workplace are. Because the reality is that every time that bing happens, or that I, turn away from spending time with my kids, or just having like downtime to read a book and look at the phone and start in my head noticing the work messages and responding to them, then that has that intrusion in my life. And then what it then means is that I'm not really having that rest time from work that I would be if I didn't have that cell phone message, if I wasn't checking those emails after hours and that kind of thing. And that's where I think, a boundary around just what time we check our phones, what time we get those messages, and then setting up notifications to correspond with that is really important. The latest version of the Apple iOS app for our phones actually has a way where you can set different levels of notifications depending on the time of day and what you're doing. They call it focus. And I think it's intended mostly for us to not be interrupted when we're doing focused work. But I think it also really helps for, when we're trying to not be interrupted with focused personal time or focused family time. And so using some of those tools to help us to carve out that time in that space, as well as those conversations in the workplace of, listen, team, the rule is that we're going to check emails during the workday. If you check and respond to emails outside of business hours, that's cool, because maybe you're flexing your time, right? Because we also want to be flexible with the hours people work, because, like, for example, today my kids are home sick. Today is not going to be a 9 to 5 work day for me. And so I'm going to be checking my emails later tonight once the kiddos are in bed and stuff like that, because I just need to. This is the reality of being able to take some time off to look after them during the day. And so recognizing that we do have some of that intrusion, but also setting up some of those guardrails of I've got my out of office reply on. I'm going to check my emails at this time and that time, but I'm going to, not worry about it while I'm, cuddled on the couch watching a Barbie movie with the kiddos later.
I think it's interesting too, the way you frame that, because we're talking about the work notifications right now. However, with the way technology is going now, there's that abundance of notifications, and we can have a whole separate conversation about this. But I think it's still important to know there's the, if you're using WhatsApp, the group message notifications, there's the social media notifications, there's the, personal notifications for email and that kind of thing. It was funny. We live in a world of memes now, not to make that our baseline here, but it was a really funny one. And it was talking about school-age children and the school emails that we get, which is just as much as the emails we get from our work. So, but the point is, we have so much out of office inundation of communications and notifications to us. And how do you set personal boundaries around that as well? So I just think it's it expands beyond now the work notifications that we take home with us and in our emails. And you're right, the new iOS has that technology built in to help encourage us to focus, where we can channel those different notifications from different parts of our lives at different times. Michelle, for yourself, what are you seeing in that space of either notifications or, wellness versus well-being, and our personal boundaries being challenged as much as we think they are?
I think that they are, Ahmed. And this is where, when I talk about mindfulness at work, this is about developing something that's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there are some folks who thrive in, and like they literally do thrive in being engaged at all times of the day, and that's just who they are. And then there's others who flounder. So a quick example is I've been chatting back and forth with a former colleague of mine, and she made a comment about how there's a number of her HR folks that are going off on sick leave, and how it's really sad that they're going off on sick leave. And so that's an example where, and I don't know all the background, of course. There's a variety of reasons of why that could be, not just, stress and burnout and mental health challenges at work. Could be other reasons for that. But this is where, your personal boundaries are so very important. Mm-hmm. Going back to, we're all replaceable at work. So those folks that are going off on sick leave, the job is going to get done either way. So taking care of yourself so that you can be your best self. Going back to that quote that you shared at the beginning, Ahmed, your best self is your relaxed self is your best self. Mm-hmm. Part of that is managing your own stress, you're self-regulating, self-managing. And these are the types of conversations that I have with folks, the clients that I work with, how mindfulness can help with that. Those are just some initial thoughts that I have, Ahmed.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's so many different avenues and things, as you said, to think of when we're thinking of those boundaries. And those boundaries are expressed in so many different ways. It's not just a technological boundary. It's that expectation or that underwritten expectation of availability, or it could be, that pressure that we feel in our workspaces of being on all the time, when we know, some places will say check your emotions at the door, but that can't always be realistic either. And so there's boundaries on both ends, two sides of the same coin, boundaries from your home life into work and from work into home life, and so on and so forth. As we delve into this deeper, I think, it would be really important for our viewers to get maybe some tips on managing personal boundaries and what they might be able to take away from this conversation to help them either manage that with their workplace or with their home. And it could even be, when they're meeting with their families and setting boundaries with family in terms of, this is the time that I'm going to be busy for work outside of regular scheduled hours, if you need to be, for example, or for work to set a boundary and say, this is my personal home life boundary and I need you to respect that. So, kind of going either way. But Brandy, let's start with you. What is one thing that you would suggest to someone struggling with personal boundaries?
I think the first thing I would say is that it's okay to have boundaries, and that this stuff is hard, right? We're not really taught how to have conversations where we say, this is what I need. Can you do that? Without it being feeling like an argument. And, I think for some of us too, myself included, we tend to think that, like, if we say, like, this is what I need, then the other person's either not going to hear it or that it's going to be a fight. So recognizing that it doesn't have to be a fight. And it's oftentimes, if we just approach the conversation like a problem to be solved, then that can be really helpful. So one of the examples I like to give is, I think that some of the, creating that understanding and that expectation for when work messages will be responded to is a really important one. And I think a lot of work places, like a lot of managers and leaders, think that they're not expecting you to reply right away. And so when you tell them that when they receive the message, you think, that you think they want a response right away, that can then become a conversation. And so saying something like, listen, I'm doing some reading and it turns out that if I don't take a break, it impacts my productivity at work. Also, I've just been feeling really tired, and like I'm really stretched. And so I think one of the things that would help me would be is if, we agree that I'll respond to work emails within the hours of 9 to 5 every day. I'm also going to look at putting aside some blocked off time in my calendar so I can check and respond to emails a couple of times a day. And that's going to really help me get some focused work done and, get the priorities that we've got on the list done. And so instead of being like, listen, I need to set a boundary with you and like just setting it up like a confrontation, instead incorporating it into part of a normal conversation that you might regularly be having. If you're not already having conversations with your manager or leader about the work that you've got on your plate and how you're juggling all of the things and your super full calendar of meetings that are back to back probably, then I think that's a good place to start. And just having those chats on a regular basis, maybe once a week, where you're saying, look, this is what I've got on my plate. This is the calendar coming up for this week. And, I know we've got an interest in working on this other project. I'm just not sure how to fit it all in with the hours that we've got, or, and then when you start having those conversations and talking about, priorities and how you're juggling your workload, as well as the things that you've accomplished and that are going well, I think that becomes then a really good spot to start slotting in those things like, listen, my kids are having a tough time at school right now, so I really need to be able to focus on family stuff when I pick them up. I usually pick them up around 5:30. They're usually in bed by 9. So, in that window, unless it's urgent, I'm just not going to be able to connect. Another one that I love really quickly is to tell people to call you if it's an emergency. We are so quick to dash off an email or a text message or a Teams message or on Slack or whatever it is. If it's text, we do it right away. But when we have to actually pick up the phone and use the telephone app, we tend to actually set the bar of emergency really high. So if you say, I'm not available to check email or Slack messages during this time, but if it's urgent, give me a call, you will be surprised how few phone calls you got. I have used that technique for years, and I think I've gotten one phone call over 4 years over it. So it's
Wow.
it's shocking how something so small will make the difference. And thinking of what you were saying about memes earlier, my brother shared one with me, which was, after hundreds of years of using the telephone, we decided we'd rather just send each other really short letters.
Yeah. and that's actually a really funny point, because between texts and emails and that, and that's really what it's become. There's endless memes about not wanting to pick up the phone, and it's so funny that we did get to this point where, for whatever reason, we don't want to pick up the phone to either make the call or take the call. The scam callers aside. But I think what I loved most about what you said there was setting expectations with those people around you that are relying on you. And I think that's completely fair, even to the point where I worked at a place once where they had an internal SLA of you need to respond to emails within 24 hours. But if we're being realistic, and within 24 business hours, not everyone is ready to respond to every single email within that time frame. Sometimes you need time to step away, think about it, maybe do some research or talk to other people and get some of those answers. And so, having that bare minimum expectation, I think, is fine. But I think we also need to set expectations with those people around me that sometimes I will need time to step away and think about what you wrote so I can formulate an appropriate response to you, because this isn't just a quick fire, answer your question kind of situation. And I think having those open, candid conversations with people really helps. And it all comes back to communication. I think it was Michelle who earlier in the call she mentioned the word human, and it stuck out to me as that at the end of the day is that we are all humans, we are all people, and we're all going through similar struggles together in the same way. And so if we just communicate with one another rather than letting either feelings fester or something else, which can then impact that well-being in the workplace and those boundaries, it can really make or break. So anyway, my point to say, as long as we're communicating with each other and setting those expectations, I think we would, move from this in a much more positive path forward. But anyways, Michelle, how about yourself? What about you? What kind of tips might you have for our viewers today?
Yeah, I ask myself this question all of the time, and it's a coaching question that I'll use. So the question is this: at this very moment, do I have a problem?
Mhm.
So do I really need to contact Brandy now when I know her kids are, she's getting, it's her dinner time or whatever it is that my colleague has shared with me at this very moment, do I have a problem? And more often than not, the answer is no, but it goes back to this instant gratification where it's like, I need to do this thing. And sometimes that thing is crossing boundaries. A colleague shared this example of, I noticed in the chat, Ahmed, and I'll address this question, the boundaries of someone that has crossed, a colleague that has crossed a personal boundary. And it was this example where the out of office message came through, and what they did, they saw the out of office and sent a text message. I know you're away, but... So this colleague blocked the person. They didn't respond to the message. They blocked the person, and it was a temporary block, of course, because you will respond. But it's like, no, I am on vacation, and this is where I was trying to get a hold of someone last week, and I phoned her and left a message on her work line and then called her cell. And then I sent an email, and that's when I got the out of office with like 4 different people that I could contact. So it wasn't my intention to bother her on holidays, but she had put in a lot of rigor in terms of, if you're dealing with this, contact this person. If you're dealing with that, contact that person. So she was doing a really good job of putting her personal boundaries in place, saying, I'm out of the office. And her email said, I am not responding to emails. Now, that's fantastic, but is that accepted in the culture of where you work? Sometimes no. So is it a cultural, a systemic cultural issue where they're talking about workplace wellness, but not setting, not allowing people to set personal boundaries? Is it cyclical? Q4 is a really, really busy time for business. So sometimes it's just, this is the way it is for these 3-4 months. Once we get through that, we're all going to pause. Sometimes workplaces even have shutdowns. Or it could be, even for a shorter period of time. Like I came from the labor relations world, and so collective bargaining, it was like all hands on deck. You need to be available. So there's a variety of factors to consider. The one that I would say is do what you need to do for yourself. And I 100% agree with you, Brandy, is have a healthy conversation about what it is that you need. Sometimes being more vulnerable up the hierarchy can make us feel safer because we feel like we need to have this availability to our people, our teams. So that could be a strategy as well, as who can you call and say, I'm going away for the weekend. I want to be unavailable. Can you stand in for me and be available for my team? That sort of thing. So these are the types of conversations that I have regularly with the clients that I work with. And there is no one size fits all, which is why we're having this conversation today. Managing personal boundaries is not easy.
Yeah, and especially when we talk about workplace culture. And I think a lot of that is changing too, even from the simple point of working from home. I'm hearing from many of my contacts and colleagues about the prospects of either their company saying, yes, we are accepting work from home post-pandemic, or we are not. And I think a lot of employers are looking to that as, is that a potential benefit that people are looking for when they're even recruiting, or if they're wanting to maintain retention levels of people. And so different items like that, I think, are creeping up more and more, where wellness and mindfulness is becoming so much more important in workplaces, and rightfully so. Right? We need to maintain a mental health check for people, where to the point it's normalized more so, or at the same level of regular doctor checkups and that kind of thing. We have sick days. Some companies will offer, I need a mental health day, and you take it for whatever you need, whenever you need, and what have you. But to the point where a sick day shouldn't just be for physically sick days. There's this whole mental side of it. Before we jump, I'm going to check the comments to see if there's any questions that have rolled in. But are there any closing things you'd like to share, Brandy? And then I'll pass it over to you as well, Michelle.
Just dovetailing with what you were just saying around the, using sick days as mental health days. I think that, there's still a lot of stigma that exists around mental health challenges in the workplace. And a lot of folks are reluctant to talk about it because they're afraid that it's going to impact how they're seen at work, or how their, what their capacity is seen as, and that sort of thing. And one of the things we've learned from this pandemic, and even before, was that we can have blips in our capacity if we're dealing with something in our personal life, or even a super challenging time in our professional life. So for example, if you're an accountant, around tax time, your capacity is super low because you are so stretched with work. Or if you're going through a challenge like, a breakup of your marriage, or a family member who's ill, things like that have a temporary dip in your capacity. And so being able to take sick days, whether it's for a physical illness or a mental illness, I think goes a long way to addressing some of that stigma piece and making it okay, as well as talking about the fact that you can take your sick day as a mental health day. I think that's an important piece. And for folks who are in leadership positions, the more that you can start to have conversations about how I'm not my best today, I'm a little tired, my kid was up late, I'm tired, or whatever it is, or I'm feeling really stretched with the workload we have right now because it's tax time, or it's Q4, or whatever it is, can help normalize some of those pieces so that it's easier for folks to talk about what it is they need. And then we can set some of those respectful boundaries. People can say, like, listen, I need to focus on this priority, so because this is the top thing that we need to get done, and let's maybe figure out when the other stuff gets done later, once we get through this thing that we really need to get done. And so things like that are the, some of the advice that I offer to leaders who I work with when, addressing how we can, or identifying how we can address and support the mental health of their employees in the workplace, as well as supporting their own mental health. Because much in the same way that, we can only be at our best self when we're doing well, the way that, our mental health and our well-being is doing impacts the way that we lead the people on our teams, the way we interact with our coworkers, as well as the quantity and the quality of the work that we're able to get done.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I love what you just said there. Michelle, how about yourself? Any closing comments?
Yeah, just, notice what it is that you need. And we're all unique human beings with all unique needs. So, if working on the Sunday works for you, great. Don't expect your colleagues to be available, right? Unless they're like you as well, right? So there's no one easy solution, but figuring out what's going to work for you, and what Brandy had said there, being respectful of what your colleagues need and respecting their boundaries as well is where I'll close with managing personal boundaries.
Awesome. Before we jump off here, Michelle, do you mind telling us a little bit? I'm excited about this one. The next Mindful Monday that's coming up on November 15th with Dave Reddicoff. I believe it's career-related stress. And, at this time, there is so much going on, and there's so much feeling going on. And I think this is a really important one to hit, especially at that timing before we'll be, closing Q4. As you said, it's a busy time of the year. Be heading into the holidays, gearing up for the next year. So anyways, can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Dave. He is a PhD researcher from the University of Alberta. He's written a publication called strengthening mental health through career development. And I just dove into this publication because my background in HR, in career development, and there's so many different aspects to managing career-related stress. And that's what we're going to talk about with Dave. So that will be on November 15th at 9 a.m. Pacific. So I hope you can all join us, those of you who are here with us. Thank you so much, Brandy, for your expertise and your thoughts. Thank you to Ahmed for hosting and checking in with our viewers. And thank you to our viewers for sharing your comments and your questions. If there was anything that we missed, shoot me a message. Happy to continue the dialogue on managing personal boundaries. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.